But there is drama in the music world.
Is there never not drama in the music world?
Well, there are certain, it's funny. If I were to, I didn't even know about this until you brought it to my attention this morning, but if I were to say to you, who are some of the bands off the top of your head? Who are some of the bands? If I say the word drama, who are some of the legendary bands that have had the most drama happen within them?
Kiss.
Okay, Kiss comes to mind, right?
Yep.
And I mentioned Fleetwood Mac a few moments ago.
Yep. That's another good one.
And of course, there's another band that has had
Motley Crue.
Lots of drama there. Yeah, we've talked about that on the show. Lots of drama there. There's a whole book about it called The Dirt, about all the Motley Crue drama.
That's right.
Metallica, some drama there. They have a great documentary, which Eric reviewed
Journey
1 week on the show, Some Kind of Monster, about Metallica. Journey, yep, they've had some legal drama.
I don't even think they talk to each other
last couple
anymore.
of years. I know they share the stage, but don't actually speak to each other. Jonathan Cain.
I think they talk to their lawyers or something bizarre like that.
Jonathan Cain and Neil Schon. Yeah, I don't think they actually speak to each other. They just play. Which I've always thought that's got to be so weird, like being in a band with someone and not even speaking to them. I remember seeing a documentary once about the Beach Boys, and there was a period where the band had essentially split. And this was like at their commercial peak. The band had essentially split into two factions. One was the Mike Love faction, and the other was the Brian Wilson faction. And they would actually enter the stage from opposite sides because they didn't want to. Like, how does a band even function that way? It's always been fascinating to me. Like, how do you write a set list? Maybe you have one person who's in charge of writing a set list. You can't all have input if you can't even have a conversation.
Goes through the lawyers, they just pass it around and agree to, no, we're not going to do this after that or whatever.
Maybe the two.
But all of those
manager.
dramas, though, are within bands that we've brought up.
Yeah.
This is not a drama within the band.
Well, there is. So, of course, we're talking about the Eagles. And the Eagles, so much drama historically in that band that when they did their reunion in the mid-'90s, they called it Hell Freezes Over. I think it was 94. And they did the Hell Freezes Over tour. And then, of course, that wasn't the end of the drama. There ended up being more drama with Don Felder getting fired from the band and so forth. So it never truly ends. Also, some intense personalities. And Don Henley, about whom this latest bit of drama seems to center around, known for having a particularly intense personality. By the way, are you an Eagles fan? Because Eagles...
always did like the Eagles.
Me too. But they're one of those bands that people who don't like... Well, they're kind of like Kiss in this sense. You know how with Kiss, like people who don't like Kiss really don't like Kiss, like really hate them. Like, I've never met anyone who simply doesn't like Kiss. I've only met people who either really like Kiss or really hate Kiss. I feel like the Eagles is like that too. Like people who don't like the Eagles really hate the Eagles. You've seen The Big Lebowski, right?
Yes.
Yes. There's a whole thing in there about how much he hates the Eagles. I personally love the Eagles.
I'm a Dudist priest.
What do you mean? Oh, yes.
From The Great Lebowski.
Right. Sorry, that took me a second. Still not used to doing this in the morning. My brain isn't fully
You're a little
activated.
cobwebby. But this is different. This is not within the band.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, we have to say hello to Chris Poirier, our friend Crispy, who is in the Facebook live chat.
Hello, buddy.
Isn't he supposed to be coming on the show at some point?
He will, yes.
Good. Yeah.
When he's ready, I'm bringing him in.
Last time we saw him was at an event at the Hop Knot.
That's true.
So yeah, there's some weird legal drama involving Don Henley, and this story is from Billboard.com. And again, I didn't know this was going on because apparently this has been going on for a little while, but there's a new wrinkle. But this had completely gotten past me until you brought it to my attention this morning.
I wouldn't call it a wrinkle. I'd call it a bit of a crater.
Yeah. So, Eagles, this is the article, Eagles stolen notes trial ends suddenly after judge says Don Henley manipulated prosecutors.
Yes. We got to spill the tea.
Yeah.
Isn't that what the youngins say now? Spill the tea?
Spill the tea. That is what the young people say, yes. It says the abrupt end came after prosecutors revealed the newly disclosed evidence from Henley cast doubt on whether the Eagles' notes had been stolen in the first place. Now, and I'm just getting familiar with this story. We're just getting familiar with this story as well, because Jenny didn't know it. You didn't know until this morning that any of this was going on either, right?
No, that's not true. I actually knew about the case being dropped, but I didn't know why. And now that I know the why, it's like, really?
Yeah. You can't trust that dastardly Don Henley.
It seems that the judge admonished them.
I like the Eagles, but I've never trusted them.
See, and everybody goes to Hotel California, and I was already, not that I don't like Hotel California, but my go-to song was always Desperado.
Yeah, I never liked Desperado.
I liked
Desperado. And Hotel California, I liked it when I was a kid, but after the 7 millionth time of hearing it, I was over it. I Can't Tell You Why is my favorite Eagles song.
Why can't you tell me?
I can't tell you why.
Why can't
That's
you
my
tell
favorite
me?
Eagles song.
What song?
I Can't Tell You Why.
Why won't you tell me?
I can't tell you why.
That's not nice. I want to know.
I know. I can't tell you why, but that is my favorite Eagles song. So,
what song?
I Can't Tell You Why.
Oy vey.
Manhattan prosecutors made the stunning decision Wednesday, March 6th, to drop a criminal case against 3 men accused of trying to sell stolen notes linked to the Eagles' 1976 album, Hotel California, with a judge saying Don Henley had manipulated prosecutors. At a hearing Wednesday, a New York judge dismissed the charges after prosecutors alerted him that newly uncovered evidence cast doubt on whether Henley's notes had been stolen in the first place. The core defense advanced by Glenn Horowitz, Craig Inciardi, and Edward Kaczynski. The disclosures came midway through a closely watched criminal trial against the 3 men, in which Henley and longtime Eagles manager Irving Azoff, who's a legend in the music industry, Irving Azoff, had already testified. The proceedings had already run more than 2 weeks and had been expected to keep going until at least next week. The sudden reversal was sparked by Henley producing new evidence that had been previously withheld under attorney-client privilege. The new materials touched on whether a journalist hired in the 1970s to write a book about the Eagles, Ed Sanders, had legitimately come into possession of Henley's notes. At a hearing in open court on Wednesday, Justice Curtis Farber sharply criticized Henley and Azoff's conduct. Quote, "It is now clear that both witnesses and their lawyers used the privilege to obfuscate and hide information that they believed would be damaging to their position that the lyric sheets were stolen," unquote. The judge said he was also troubled that prosecutors had been, quote, manipulated into bringing the charges, and questioned why they had not more thoroughly vetted the accusations and the evidence. But he praised them for dropping the case once new evidence had come to light. Now, by the way, is it possible that there was no manipulation here, but the prosecutors were merely big fans of the Eagles?
No.
Or perhaps Don Henley's solo work. Building the Perfect Beast is a great album.
And if that was the case, they wouldn't have dropped the case. They would keep going.
Because I have to tell you, like if I were some sort of prosecutor and Gene Simmons came to me and said, "Hey, I want to press charges," I'd be like, "Yeah, whatever you want to do, dude. Let's do it."
Stop it.
It's Gene Simmons
of Kiss.
Of Kiss.
Wow.
Maybe he'll call in one of these mornings.
Stop it.
One of these mornings. No, see, now I'm mixing my bands.
Well, this is an interesting situation because it's not often that you see prosecutors pulling their own case and going, "Oh no, we're not going to prosecute anymore."
Yeah.
So, it's pretty damning. And this is information that Henley and his attorneys kept from prosecutors, kept from the court. And that information was very damning to them, which is why the judge was admonishing them.
You're not supposed to do that. Not supposed to hide stuff.
No. They used the attorney-client privilege as their foundation to keep these documents private. But apparently something happened that, I don't know if it forced their hand or whatever, that they had to give these documents over. And the prosecutors are going, "Oh, wait a minute here. If this is right, nobody ever sold anything."
It says here in a statement to Billboard following Wednesday's hearing, Henley's attorney, Dan Petroselli, said, quote, "The attorney-client privilege is a foundational guardrail in our justice system, and rarely, if ever, should you have to forsake it to prosecute or defend a case. As the victim in this case, Mr. Henley has once again been victimized by this unjust outcome. He will pursue all his rights in the civil courts," unquote. The Manhattan DA's office declined to comment. Horowitz, a rare book dealer, Inciardi, a curator at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and Kaczynski, a memorabilia auctioneer, were all charged in 2022 with conspiracy over accusations that they tried to resell and hide the origin of the handwritten notes penned by Henley during the creation of Hotel California. Manhattan DA attorney Alvin Bragg, we've heard his name in connection with other cases we won't talk about here.
We have.
Said the trio had, quote, made up stories about the origin of the documents and their right to possess them so they could turn a profit, unquote. But the three men always maintained that they had done nothing wrong. Their core argument. Okay, so now we're getting into the heart of the matter. You see what I did there?
Yeah.
Trying to get down to the heart of the matter.
Oh.
This is one of my favorite Don Henley songs.
Yeah.
See, I'm telling you, if I were a prosecutor and Don Henley came to me, I'd be like, let's get these guys.
This is why you shouldn't be one.
That's right.
You know, people have like these rights things.
I know.
No.
But I'd be more interested in my fandom of Don Henley and the Eagles.
Apparently, we see that selfishness in you.
I would not have the discipline to not.
Well, you don't have a discipline. We know this.
Now, if Joe Walsh
Especially with
came to
food.
me, I'd be a little bit more suspicious because that song "Life's Been Good." I never cared for it.
Wow.
Yeah,
So that's why you're judgy.
So if Joe Walsh wanted to bring charges against somebody, I'd be like, no,
You're terrible.
we're not doing that.
You're judgy.
Go get me Don Henley.
Since when are you this judgmental?
Well, it's we are talking about legal matters.
Oh, does that change your perspective?
Yes.
Mm.
So their core argument that the alleged theft, Sanders had legally obtained them. This is their core argument. Sanders legally obtained them in the 1970s in the process of writing a never-released book about the Eagles. If the notes were never stolen, the three argued, how could they be charged with reselling stolen property? Okay, so in other words, so if I understand this correctly, in other words, if Don Henley willingly gave the notes here,
Yes.
take these because you're going to write this book.
Yes.
Although
That means they're not stolen because you hand them over. And if you never sell them to anybody else, then how can you be criminally prosecuted for selling stolen property? Because that's what the charge is.
it does seem like it would be unethical, though, if maybe not illegal, and there's more to this. We'll get to it, but just as we're going through it. Well, but if they tried to.
If they tried to sell the documents they had?
Because the thing is, if somebody gives you something for the purpose of writing a book and then you never write the book and then you say, well, I'm just going to take these and sell them. That seems really... That would be,
I would think, criminal.
Well, I don't think I wouldn't think it would be criminal. In other words, if Henley gave him the documents and said, here, these are so you can write your book, and the book never gets written, but Henley gave that property to that author or prospective author, and then so they're now the property of the author if Henley gave them.
They're not the property of the author. I argue that they are not the property of the author. If the information was given for the expressed purpose of I'm hiring you to write this book, here are the documentation, and you never give them back, doesn't necessarily mean you have the right to sell them.
I would say definitely that's your argument means to me it would be unethical to try to sell those documents. Completely unethical, but not necessarily illegal. If Henley takes his property and said, here, I'm giving this to you, so and that now becomes the property of the author, that may be where the hang up is. So is it illegal? I wouldn't think it would be illegal, but I do think it would be highly unethical. Something can be unethical, but not necessarily illegal.
You're hired for an express purpose and you're given documentation for that express purpose.
Right.
I'm assuming there would be a contract there that spells out what he's doing.
You would think, but remember, this was during
the process of doing that doesn't mean you have the right to.
And there may not have been any kind of a contract. I mean, remember, this was during the making of Hotel California. These guys were all coked up.
No. No, this is about not the writing part, but about giving these documents over to a writer who was hired to write a book, but the book was never published.
Right.
That doesn't mean it wasn't written. Doesn't mean it wasn't even finished. Right? Could have been totally finished, ready to go to print, and they pull the plug on it and say, we're not going to do that. That's what he was given these documents
which does
for.
happen. Yeah.
Even if, that doesn't give him the right to then sell them. So I come to you, you're a cake baker, and I come in with a photograph. I want this photograph on this cake, and it's somebody famous. And I want you to copy this picture, but I don't want you to do anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have the right to take that picture and then sell it and turn a profit on it? Doesn't that picture still belong to me? I've only given it to you for the purpose of making that picture on that cake.
But see, then we get into, and again, by the way, neither of us are legal experts.
No,
so
not at all.
We might be over our heads.
Feel free to chime in. Give us a call.
So if anyone is, 603-250-6007. But I would think, in the example that you just gave, again, it would be completely unethical for someone under those circumstances to then take that property and try to sell it. But is that a criminal matter? Is that really a criminal matter, or is it a civil matter at that point?
It's a criminal matter if you took something that didn't belong to you and you then sold it, which is what this case was about, taking those documents and then selling them to turn a profit. But that's not what happened.
Yeah.
In this instance, they did have it, but they never actually sold it to anyone. So you can't be convicted of selling stolen property if you never actually sold it.
But they tried, right?
I don't know if they tried or not.
Because isn't that the whole point? They tried to, because if you try, I mean, trying but not succeeding doesn't help you. I mean, you can
just because
you can try to rob a bank, but if
that's theft without selling. That's still that's different. You can't put robbing a bank and conflate that into
no.
This,
but I'm just saying.
Far different
I'm just saying
other.
if you try to do something illegal but you don't succeed, that doesn't get you off the hook in anything. I'm just saying.
But you can't get prosecuted for selling stolen property if you never sold the stolen property.
Well, no, but you could get
prosecuted for attempting. Maybe.
Well, yeah, that's my point.
But they specifically point out that part of the reason why these charges were dropped was because the notes were never stolen. They were handed to the writer, and then they never. How could they be okay? Well, maybe I'm wrong about this now that I'm looking at it and thinking about it. If the notes were never stolen, then if they did sell them, they wouldn't be stealing. They wouldn't be selling stolen property. They would simply be stealing property that was within their.
Well, that was my point.
But
that's not.
That's why I'm starting to think you're right and I'm wrong on this.
So that to me is not a criminal matter, but it could be a civil matter. If Henley says, wait a minute, you're trying to sell this property that I gave to you for the express purpose of writing a book that never came out, and now you're trying to sell that, that would be a civil matter, right? Henley could then say, well, I'm going to sue you because you're trying to sell property that I gave you for a specific purpose, and now you're trying to profit off of that.
Right.
Yeah.
See, this is why I'm thinking I think you're right. I think that because they were handed over willingly, they were never stolen.
Right.
And then if this was happening in 1970, that those notes were actually handed over, we're now sitting here in 2024.
Yeah.
I mean, how long do you have something in your possession before it becomes yours? Isn't possession 9/10 of the law anyway? So maybe it's been so long he had it. If he did sell it, is it even criminal, or is it even unethical? If he's had it since 1970.
Yeah, well, there is that. I mean. Yeah, I think it's unethical to do that regardless of time. But the mentioning of time does bring up something else that I'm thinking about too. And it's a similar thought to excuse me. It's a similar thought to when we were talking about months ago the Darrell Hall versus John Oates lawsuit, and we were talking about how these guys are in their mid to late 70s. Is this what is this how they want it to end? Don Henley is 76 years old. I mean, if I were 76 years old and already had more money than I could ever spend, I don't know if I'd want to be spending time in court trying to sue somebody out of making money off of something I had done. I mean, I guess maybe it's a matter of pride or principle, but at 76, Don Henley, relax.
There's a nefarious side in this as well. When you look at what the judge had said, he said, quote, "A review of these newly disclosed materials has demonstrated a highlight Mr. Henley and Mr. Azoff used of the privilege to shield themselves from a thorough and complete cross-examination," was said by Justin Farber. So in other words, because they withheld this information, the defense didn't get to cross-examine them on it, didn't even get to know about it. So they're shielding themselves by keeping this close to the chest and not sharing the information when legally they had the legal, what's the word I'm looking for, requirement to disclose this information. Mm-hmm. They had no right to keep it secret under the guise of client attorney privilege, which is what they were doing.
Yeah.
So the judge is totally admonishing them for doing that because not only did they prevent important information from being released, but they also prevented the defense from being able to face their accuser.
Yeah. It says here, again, this is from Billboard. The trial kicked off last month with Inciardi's attorney telling the judge that prosecutors had distorted the history to charge innocent men, and the DA's office would be apologizing at the end of this case. Henley later testified that he had not willingly given away the notes, saying they were, quote, something very personal, very private, unquote. So it sounds to me like Henley and Azoff and their attorneys are trying to make it sound like these notes were stolen.
When actually he sounds like he gave it to them and forgot and never retrieved them.
Well, again, it's an indelicate way of putting it, but I do think it's valid. These guys, again, the Eagles during the making of Hotel California, who knows what the hell they did or can remember correctly or not. They were all coked up. I'm not, and again, it's an indelicate way of putting it, but it's just true. Like, you know what I mean?
So you think there's something in those papers that he doesn't want out there? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm just saying, who knows what conversations were had between Don Henley and
back in 1970 with this
writer.
Guy.
I mean, who knows?
Does he even realize that he gave it to the writer? Was he with it at the time?
Right. That's my point.
I get that. But no matter what the situation was in that moment, it sounds like he just left the paperwork with the guy, right? They never went back to the writer and said, "Give me back my notes."
Who knows? He
just kind of shoved it all to him. Yeah, write me this book. And then somewhere along the line, dude goes, "I got your book," and he goes, "Never mind."
Yeah.
That sounds like exactly what happened, is it never was actually published.
It says here, at Wednesday's hearing, Justice Curtis said that Henley had recently handed over more than 6,000 new pages of emails and other disclosures that contained new information about how Sanders came to own the notes. Such jarringly late disclosures violated Horowitz, Inciardi and Kaczynski's constitutional rights, the judge said.
Yeah, 6,000. Come on. It's not like it's a single 6,000 documents. Wow. That's an awful lot to be keeping secret.
Yeah.
Especially where obviously it was information that should have been provided under the disclosure rules.
It says in a statement to Billboard, Horowitz's attorney, Jonathan Bach, said, quote, "We are glad the DA's office made the right decision and finally dropped this case. It never should have been brought. Mr. Horowitz looks forward to carrying on with his important work," unquote. But regardless, I mean, again, I'm not any kind of a legal expert, just as a layman. It sounds to me like this was, if anything, a civil case, not a criminal one.
Yeah, but these guys could have been facing real jail time.
Yeah.
Keeping that paperwork is literally put 3 people's lives in jeopardy. That's pretty hard, man. That's pretty bad.
Yeah.
So you got to have a lot of hate in your heart to want to ruin people's lives like that. I wonder what's in that book. What's in that never released book?
Yes.
We'll probably never know.
I was looking to see if there was any kind of a other update. But again, it's like, you know.
This is really recent. This just happened.
Yeah.
Just this past week was the case officially dismissed. And it's also very telling when you look at it, because it's not the judge who dismissed the case. It's the prosecutors themselves who went to the judge and said, "We need to pull back on this. We need to get rid of these charges. We're not going to prosecute." Now,
I want to go back.
I can't imagine prosecutors liking to drop criminal charges too much. So this must have been interesting.
Although Alvin Bragg kind of has his hands full. I do want to
think.
I do want to go back to. By the way, do you think Don Henley pays his lawyers?
Probably.
I might have him confused with somebody else. Anyway,
I don't think he gets away with not paying lawyers. I think there's only special class for that.
Just for context, I do want to go back to, there's a story here. This is from February 20th. And this might add some context to what we're looking at now, which is the latest update. This is from the AP News. This is from February 20th, but this kind of explains the foundation of the trial. A story titled, "Welcome to the Hotel California Case, the trial over handwritten lyrics to an Eagles classic." It says here, in the mid-'70s, the Eagles were working on a spooky, cryptic new song on a lined yellow pad. Don Henley, with input from band co-founder Glenn Frey, jotted thoughts about a dark desert highway and a lovely place with a luxurious surface and ominous undertones, and something on ice, perhaps caviar or Taitinger. Is that how you say that? Or pink champagne? The song Hotel California became one of rock's most indelible singles, and nearly a half-century later, those handwritten pages of lyrics in the making have become the center of an unusual criminal trial set to open on Wednesday. So again, remember, this is from February 20th. Rare book dealer Glenn Horowitz, former Rock and Roll Hall of Famer curator Craig Inciardi. I finally figured out how to say his name.
Well done.
Thank you. And
it rolled off your tongue.
And memorabilia seller Edward Kaczynski are charged with conspiring to own and try to sell manuscripts of Hotel California and other Eagles hits without the right to do so. The three have pleaded not guilty, and their lawyers have said the men committed no crime with the papers, which they acquired via a writer who'd worked with the Eagles. But the man, these guys are not the writer. None of these guys are the writer of the book. They're claiming they got these from the writer. So we should clarify that, because I wasn't clear on that myself.
I wasn't clear on that either.
So none of these three guys are the author of the book. They're all saying that they
came into possession of the notes from the writer of the book, so they have to prove that the writer didn't steal them.
Yeah.
All right, now we're getting clearer. Here we go.
But it says, the Manhattan DA's office says the defendants connived to obscure the document's disputed ownership, despite knowing that Henley said the pages were stolen.
Wow.
Clashes over valuable collectibles abound, but criminal trials like this are rare. Many fights are resolved in private, in lawsuits, or with agreements to return the items. Like I was saying, like it being a civil matter, not a criminal one.
Right.
Travis McDade, a University of Illinois law professor who studies rare document disputes, said, quote, "If you can avoid a prosecution by handing over the thing, most people just hand it over," unquote. Of course, the case of the Eagles manuscripts is distinctive in other ways, too. The prosecutor's star witness is indeed that. Henley is expected to testify between Eagles tour stops. The non-jury trial could offer a peek into the band's creative process and life in the fast lane of the 70s stardom. At issue are over 80 pages of draft lyrics from the blockbuster 1976 Hotel California album, including words to the chart-topping, Grammy-winning title cut. It features one of classic rock's most recognizable riffs, best-known solos, and most oft-quoted, arguably over-quoted lines, "You can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave." Henley has said the song is about the dark underbelly of the American dream. It's still streamed over 220 million times and got 136,000 radio spins last year in the U.S. alone, according to the entertainment data company Luminate. The Hotel California album has sold 26 million copies nationwide over the years, bested only by an Eagles Greatest Hits disc and Michael Jackson's Thriller. The pages also include lyrics from songs including Life in the Fast Lane and New Kid in Town. Eagles manager Irving Azoff has called the documents irreplaceable pieces of musical history. Horowitz, Inciardi, and Kaczynski are charged with conspiracy to possess stolen property and various other offenses. They're not charged with actually stealing documents, nor is anyone else, but prosecutors will still have to establish that the documents were stolen. The defense maintains that's not true. And I think that's where the rub is. But how do you prove that the documents were stolen? Much turns on the Eagles' interactions with, this is the context I was looking for. Much turns on the Eagles' interactions with Ed Sanders, a writer who also co-founded the 1960s counterculture rock band The Fugs, F-U-G-S. Got to be careful how I say that on the air. He worked in the, I don't even want to pronounce it the way I think it's supposed to be pronounced because, again, we're on FM radio. He worked in the late 70s and early 80s on an authorized Eagles biography that was never published. Sanders is not charged in the case. A phone message seeking comment was left for him. He sold the pages to Horowitz, who then sold them to Inciardi and Kaczynski. Okay, so the writer, Ed Sanders, he took those documents and he sold them to Horowitz, one of the three guys who is charged, who then sold them to the other two guys who are charged. Horowitz has handled huge rare book and archive deals, and he's been entangled in some ownership spats before. One involved papers linked to Gone with the Wind author Margaret Mitchell. That was settled. Inciardi worked on notable exhibitions for the Cleveland-based Rock Hall of Fame. Not the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the Rock Hall of Fame. Kaczynski has been a principal in Gotta Have It Collectibles, known for auctioning celebrities' personal possessions. So personal that Madonna unsuccessfully sued to try to stop a sale that included her latex briefs. Oh, if only we'd known about that when we did the Madonna segment. Henley,
latex briefs.
Yes. Those were auctioned off, apparently.
Ew.
Henley,
Sorry.
Well, you know.
I don't want anyone's underwear.
Wait, listen.
I don't care who they are.
It's Madonna. She's famous.
I don't care. I don't want anybody's used underwear.
Madonna. It's Madonna, though.
Yeah, but she farted in them.
Ah, you don't know that?
Yes, I do.
You
Everybody
don't-
farts.
No, not Madonna.
Yeah, she does.
Not Madonna.
Everybody does.
How dare you?
Yes.
She is named after the mother of our Lord.
Yep, and she farted too.
I don't think so. There's an REM song about that, I think.
Here's the fart, everywhere. The fart,
Oh, it's
fart.
everybody farts.
Here's the fart, there's the
sometimes.
fart. I like mine better.
Henley told a grand jury that he never gave the biographer the lyrics, according to court filings from Kaczynski's lawyers. But defense lawyers have signaled that they plan to probe Henley's memory of the time. Quote, we believe that Mr. Henley voluntarily provided the lyrics to Mr. Sanders, unquote, attorney Scott Edelman said in court last week. Now, by the way, so Henley's not claiming that these three guys stole anything. He's claiming that the author, Ed Sanders, is the one who stole
And
the
they
documents.
have possession of a stolen property.
But possessing stolen property is a crime.
And were they trying to sell it?
So,
Were they trying to sell them?
yeah, apparently, yes. So,
Stolen property, so they're trying to sell.
Gotcha. Now that we have more context, now I'm starting to flip back to saying maybe this, I can see why this was considered a criminal case and not civil. Because if there is alleged theft involved.
Right. But he was hiding 6,000 pages of documentation that apparently refutes that and insists that they willingly gave the documents to the writer intending on having a book about them.
Yeah.
And then squished the book and never took back their documents.
Yeah, I mean,
charges weren't brought against these guys until 2022.
For all we know, there could be something in those emails about, a conversation they had at Studio 54.
I don't think they were emails at Studio 54 in 1970.
No, but I'm saying maybe referencing a conversation they had at Studio 54 about the lyrics or something that Don Henley now can't remember or something. You know what I mean?
Previous documents from long ago that they, maybe from starting the book talk.
Because back in the day when Paulie C. and I used to hang out at Studio 54 with Cher and all of them, I think I remember seeing Don Henley there.
Here we go.
That's a little bit inside, but if you're
pipe dreaming away.
If you're a WMNH devotee, you know the reference.
Please.
Sanders told Horowitz in 2005 that while working on the Eagles book, he was sent whatever papers he wanted from Henley's home in Malibu, California, according to the indictment. Well, wait a minute, though.
What?
Yeah, see, yeah.
What do you mean, wait a minute? What?
So he says, he was sent whatever he needed for the book, basically.
Uh-huh.
If I were an author, if I were working on a book for somebody and they were sending me papers, I wouldn't just assume, well, these are mine to do whatever I want with.
Correct. But if you've had them in your possession since 1970, how long in your possession until they become yours and you are able to get rid of them?
Right.
Or are you ever able to do that?
Right.
That's an interesting conundrum.
It says, then Kaczynski's business offered some pages at auction in 2012. Henley's attorneys came knocking, and Horowitz, Inciardi, and Sanders in varying combinations began batting around alternate versions of the manuscript's provenance, the indictment says. Yeah, interesting. So according to the indictment, they tried to muddy the waters about, how these by the way, once again, though, just from Don Henley's perspective, and I understand pride and principle and all that, but this 76-year-old man who's already extremely wealthy, if he stops this from happening, what does he get out of it financially? Nothing, right? But if somebody else,
unless he's looking to regain the control over those paperwork, get them back, and then he can sell them himself for more money.
But he's probably not going to sell them. He probably just wants them back.
How do you know that?
Well, I don't know that.
Maybe he's money hungry. Maybe that's why he's doing the lawsuit in the first place.
But if somebody else can sell them, there might be an Eagles fan who wants to spend the money. I mean, what
diehard Eagles fan would want to have?
Right. So
the original.
At a certain point, what's it matter? Again, I'm just saying, why does this guy want to go? Why does Don Henley want to do all this? Now, by the way,
He's getting some free publicity out of it.
I do understand why in one
Back
sense.
in the limelight a little bit.
I do understand why in one sense, because he is Don Henley. And this is consistent with everything that we've heard over the years about him as a person and his personality.
Has he always been a lawsuity kind of guy?
Well, not necessarily litigious, but he's known for having a very prickly personality.
Oh, I really don't know much about the man. I just know some of the music.
I mean, I'm a fan of his music, but there have been some pretty consistently some unpleasant things said about him as a person. He's never been a nice guy, as far as I can tell, from what people say about him. I'm trying to think of something nice that someone's ever said about Don Henley, and nothing leaps to mind.
That's terrible.
As a person.
That's terrible.
Yeah, that's just my impression. I don't know.
Jeez.
That's just my impression. It says, in one story, Sanders found the pages discarded in a backstage dressing room. In others, he got them from a stage assistant, or while amassing, quote, a lot of material related to the Eagles from different people, unquote. In yet another story, he obtained them from Glenn Frey, an account that, quote, would make this go away once and for all, unquote, Horowitz suggested in 2017. But then Glenn Frey died the year before. Wow, 2016 Glenn Frey died. Quote, he merely needs gentle handling and reassurance that he's not going to the can, unquote, Horowitz emailed Inciardi during a 2012 exchange about getting Sanders' explanation shaped into a communication to auctioneers, the indictment says. Sanders supplied or signed off on some of the varying explanations, according to the indictment, and it's unclear what he may have conveyed verbally, but he apparently rejected at least the dressing room tale. And by the way, that's something that's that we've heard, like with the Beatles, for example, somebody picks up handwritten lyrics or notes left behind in a dressing room or backstage, at a concert or in a recording studio. Just somebody leaves something behind, somebody else picks it up. Who really owns it at that point, Is it stealing? If somebody leaves something behind and it doesn't look like they care about it and you pick it up, is that theft? I mean, it is unethical, I think, if you're,
yeah.
But if in that situation, but Kaczynski, I'm going to skip down. This gets pretty in depth, but okay, so I'm going to skip down a little bit, but Sotheby's listed the Hotel California song lyrics in a 2016 auction, but withdrew them after learning the ownership was in question. Yeah, because Sotheby's doesn't want to end up in any kind of legal trouble.
Well, he apparently does go after everything. I'm looking at some notations from someone else who's saying you can rarely find any of the Eagles on his solo material on YouTube. When a video of their music gets uploaded, it's quickly removed. He's strict about not allowing people to take pictures or videos at Eagle concerts.
Yeah.
He also doesn't seem to like people who play his music in public places. Wow.
Yeah, that's his reputation. That's all consistent with everything that we know about Don Henley.
The worst of the worst examples of him being overprotective include that one time when he sued because of a hotel in Mexico that had the name Hotel California. He also sued Duluth Trading Company because of a T-shirt containing the words Don Henley and Take It Easy, and even sued a foundation that helps protect Eagles in America because he felt they were infringing on the band's name. He wasn't happy about Frank Ocean sampling Hotel California and went as far as to call him a cuss word and attack him despite his popularity at the time. Eagles shows are also some of the most expensive ticket-wise.
Yes.
Especially for a band that hasn't released a new single in 30 years. Wow. There was I guess the reason this came up, I guess, was there was a video, some old commercials that were removed and got copyright strikes issued on YouTube because Henley's song New York Minute was used for a few seconds in a promo for a TV show, which probably made up about 5% of the entire video.
Yeah.
So, yeah, apparently he's quite the protective individual, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, and that's all fine in the sense that, look, you should protect your intellectual property and so forth, but at a certain point, some of it seems a little petty.
Yeah, but yeah, I think it's sad, really, that he is this protective, because I think it hurts in the long run, like not having people listening to your music on YouTube.
Yeah.
Why not? Why wouldn't you want your music to stay alive and in the public eye? Why be that? Like, do you want it to? The best way to fade something away is to keep it out of the public eye.
Yeah. Well, I mean, then again, he may look at it as he never has to worry about that, really, and neither do the Eagles, because look, you could probably turn on Rock 101 right now and hear an Eagles song. You know what I mean? Like, because of classic rock, the classic rock radio format, they never really have to worry about it. And they'll always be able to charge enormous sums of money for their tours and so forth.
They do have stuff on YouTube of them, though. So
yeah.
He probably just finds one and goes after that one person and then finds somebody else. Maybe that's how he passes his time. I think it's sad, though. I really do. Because I mean, I would think that an artist would want their music to never be forgotten and to have it be wide and far. But I might be wrong. I mean, I could be wrong in this.
I think.
But it doesn't sound like anybody stole anything. It sounds like they turned over stuff for a book and never took it back.
Well, who knows? I mean, we don't know exactly what happened there, and
we know he gave him the stuff in the 1970s, and there's no evidence to prove that he's ever sued or anything to fight to get documents back.
Right.
He didn't care about them until they turned up in somebody else's possession.
Yeah.
So does that, because you forgot something, doesn't make it theft?
Right.
It's your responsibility to retrieve your belongings. It's not the other person's responsibility to bring it to you, in my opinion.
Yeah. I don't know. I'll be curious to see. So this has been dropped, just to kind of put a button on it. It's been dropped as a criminal matter, but
that doesn't end it, because he is vowing to sue them civilly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we'll have to stay tuned to see if there's another court case coming up.
Well, that's what you do, right? I mean, if it doesn't work out criminally, you always have that option.
Yep.